I am a huge fan of rules and structure, and I have rules that I live my life by. And my new rule lately, one of my trainers, teachers, mentors, I need to make sure I'm using my outside voice. So if I kind of get into a moment and I'm too quiet, if someone can just holler out, use your outside voice, then I can remember to do that. So I'm asking you all for help.
First of all.
And starting with that, I'll talk more about why it's important to ask for help in a few minutes. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at the gym with a friend of mine, and he asked what I was going to talk about tonight. And I said, I don't know. Like, I could talk about a lot of different things. Like, I'm really good at running my mouth, as anyone who's been in a group with me or any other situation knows, that I can talk about a lot of things. And so I said, I'm not sure. I don't know if I should talk about like a subject, like almost like teach a lesson, or if I should share part of my story. And he just looked at me like I had a lobster on my head, and he said, you need to share your story. And then I looked at Instagram, and it had been announced that I was sharing my story. So that was really easy. And that was a really simple synchronicity to follow. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my story has changed since then. And I'll touch on that also. But my story changed in a way that I didn't expect this week. But I want to talk, I wrote down really fancy notes on Mel's card. So I want to, the first thing that has been coming up for me all day is I love cliches, and I love the ones that I kind of make up, and other people's cliches too, and I usually share when I steal somebody else's. But that family is what we make it. And how that kind of came about was I was at a family thing a few years ago, and my mom popped out 10 babies. 7 of us have one dad, 3 of us have another. And so my family is confusing, don't worry. Like, my husband probably still needs to look at his map to figure out what's going on with my siblings. But my older sister has a bunch of daughters, and one of her little ones asked how she is related to these other children that were in the room. And the truth is they're not related, because my sister and I don't share a father. My parents are divorced, and these other children are my step siblings' children. And so they're technically not related. And so my sister, knowing that I have a background in family stuff, said, go ask Aunt Aimee. And I was put on the spot as the expert. And my answer was that family is what we make. And that kind of stuck. I heard Haley, you mentioned brothers and sisters that you can call. So what I mean when I say family is what we make it is we've got the families we came from, and the families we make, and the families we choose. And in here, there's every combination of all of that for many of us. And I know that there are a lot of people here who are family that we choose. And nothing warms my heart more than when my guys call each other brothers. And we're brothers and sisters in this, because we're fighting this fight. It's a fight a lot of days, and it's joyous a lot of days. So I want to talk about, one of the things I say all the time is just listen and do. And so I wanted to talk about kind of what that means. And that ties into my story a little bit. So I have a background in a completely different industry. And in December of 2015, I had a family member who was in inpatient treatment, and I was attending Family Week programming. And I actually have 3 family members who struggled with drugs. And so I had no idea. So like at that time, my understanding of addiction was like, what is wrong with these fools? Why can they not, like, I don't have to use drugs to have a good time. Like, can you just come over for dinner and not shoot heroin? Like, it shouldn't be that hard. But that was really, and now I feel like bad saying that, but that was my understanding as a family member. Was like, why don't you just stop? And so what I learned going through this family programming was that addiction is a disease, it runs in our family, it's related to trauma, and then it all made sense why we couldn't stop. Because we just like textbook, check all the boxes in my family. And so as I learned things, I started thinking, why isn't this information available to people who aren't paying top dollar for residential treatment? And so I had this brilliant idea that, like, it wasn't me, but I was basically told by my higher powers that I needed to go back to school. And so how that looked was that I was 37 years old, and I had like 12 credits from the 90s that probably weren't worth anything. And I just made the decision that I needed a master's degree. And so there's logistics involved there. And I knew that Salt Lake Community College had a social work program because my sister had done it. And so I had this conversation with my boyfriend, which I'm sure you can all imagine how he felt about this. I was like, hey, I think I just need to go to school. Like, I just need to drop everything and go to school. And we had been through enough that we were, like, it was kind of norm to just listen and do and just follow intuition and inspiration. And so he kind of gulped and said, well, if that's what you think you need to do, why don't you walk down that path? And if it's the right thing, it'll work out. And if it's not the right thing or the right time, then we'll know, we'll get that answer. And so I took that as support, and I was like, cool. And so I contacted Slick, and it's December, the day before Christmas Eve, when I got this brilliant plan planned into my head. So I know that there's a semester that's going to start sometime in the early January. So what I did was I contacted Slick and I said, hey, I want to start school in January, and they kind of laughed. And they said, well, that's cool, but there's no way to do that. And I said, okay, well, what do I need to do? And they financial aid paperwork, get these 20-year-old transcripts from Massachusetts, like chase down all of this stuff, and there was no way. And then I did it, and it worked, and everything happened in line, and financial aid went through, and I was good. And they said, okay, cool, that was weird, but you're not going to be able to register for any classes. And I said, okay. Because all the classes in fall, they're usually online or at different campuses, and I said, okay, cool. So I wrote out the schedule that I wanted, and then I registered for every class I wanted in exactly the time slot I wanted it. No online classes, all real life, all at the same campus. So then I felt like that was my higher power saying, yeah, that's probably what you're supposed to do, because it's working out. And so that's what we did. So he's my husband now, but we just made that the priority. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is who we are now. And we just went. And then I did 2 semesters at community college. And then I decided that I needed to transfer to UVU. I won't take time with the details, but it was exactly the same thing. I decided in June that I wanted to go to UVU, and I had to have everything in by the end of July in order to register, and it was impossible, and it happened again. The same thing. Every class I wanted, exactly the time slot I wanted. And if any of you have ever tried to register for UVU, you know that's not a thing. But it worked. And then everything just kept kind of working, and I ended up, because it was just our goal and what we do now, like everything worked out, and I fast-tracked it and was entering my last semester of my undergrad. And on the 12th day of that semester, my brother died as a result, kind of a direct/indirect result of his addiction and his struggles to find recovery. And at that point I was shattered, and I didn't think I could do it. And I had applied to the master's program at UVU kind of on the lark, and because I wanted to go to a real school for my master's degree. And it turned out that the person who had told me, why don't you just apply, ended up going through my master's program with me, so that's pretty cool. But everything just kept working out, even though it didn't work out the way I thought it was supposed to. And I think that's an important thing for everyone to note, is that sometimes we get attached to outcomes and we don't stop and listen or see the things that we really truly need to see. And for me, UVU was exactly where I needed to be. It was exactly the people I needed to be around. It was exactly the internship I needed in my probably first and second years of grad school. But I didn't know how I was going to do any of it. But it all just worked out. And so I think that a big piece of that is what I want to share is how, and I thought it was interesting, like Z and I've never had like a real conversation. And there's kind of a theme that happened. So I'm going to just call that a synchronicity. People ask me, I use the term higher powers a lot. And the reason I do that is partly because I'm a social worker and we work really hard to be inclusive and to use language that is inclusive. But I use things interchangeably. God, universe, whatever, like just whatever fits. And so, like Z was saying, that he described what his higher power is and his relationship with God. And I think it's important to point out that is super inclusive language. Like, this is how it works for me, and this is what I believe. Many of you know I'm a big fan of I statements. And so, but that's really like what it's about. So the reality for me is that as far as higher powers and having faith in something bigger than ourselves, what works is whatever we are able to recognize and whatever we are able to see, as far as signs, symbolism, traditions, rituals, things like that. Like, whatever makes sense to you makes sense to you, and it's cool. Go with it. And it's very important that I was telling someone earlier today that we don't share the same belief system, but I said I know that we don't, we don't share the same faith tradition. And I said, but I need you to know that I do believe a lot of the same things that you believe. We just use different words for it. And I think that's really important. So whether we are saying God or universe or whatever, I want, I guess what I was skipping over was that what I believe, I don't know what I believe. And that's the truth. I don't know what I believe. People ask me all the time, like, do you believe it, whatever religious or spiritual things, and I don't know. And it changes every day. And it just is what it is. And so I think that there's a lot, especially in the recovery community, we have a lot of pressure to understand and to kind of define what our higher power looks like or is. And it just felt really important for me to share that there's some freedom in that, and there's some room for interpretation in that. And then it really is just whatever makes sense for us is what's going to work. Back to the beginning when I asked for help with my outside voice. I have a couple of rules, like I mentioned, and one of them, there are a few that like maybe switch places in the top two, but one of them is ask for what you need. And I think it's usually rule number one, unless the situation requires rule number two. But the reason it is so important to ask for what we need is because we need each other. We need to feel seen and accepted and understood and loved. And when we ask for what we need, we're inviting people to see us. We're inviting people to understand us, to love us. And we are giving them the opportunity to serve us the same way we want to serve them. And so by asking for what we need, even though it's hard, and even though a lot of us aren't used to it, and maybe a lot of us have, life experiences that have taught us that it's not safe or okay to ask for what we need, but that it's foundational to building our community. And our community becomes our family. So that every time we ask for help, we allow ourselves to be seen, heard, understood, and loved. Because that's really what it comes down to, is that we are, by saying I need something, then I am allowing you to see me and to show me love. And I think that's super important for the consistency. I took notes on these talks, and I wrote like stars about that it's never going to be easy. One of the things last night, I feel like this is a good place to wrap up, but there was some question about whether or not I would be here tonight because of circumstances in not just my life, but a lot of our lives this week. This is the second worst week of my life. And it's been really hard. And what I said to my husband last night, I said, I feel like I need to go so that I can show my people that we can feel through things and that we can do life anyway. And then I said, wait, I'm going to text that to you because I feel like that was pretty good. And then when we got here tonight, I was like, hey, what was that thing I texted you? But that's kind of where I want to wrap it up. We as an Iowa recovery family, and the bigger, wider community lost someone really important this week. And it's okay to feel whatever we're feeling. And we all have grounding and coping skills, and I want to make sure that we all have permission to leave those on the shelf for a minute if we need to feel the things that we need to feel, so that we're not grounding ourselves out of healing. So my only challenge for all of you is say I love you all day long. Say it to everyone you love, even if you just did. Unless it's super creepy, say it again. I feel like if someone's getting a little creepy with you, just hold a boundary. It's cool. You're all seen, you're all loved, and you're all understood here. And I love you.
I love you, Aimee.
I love you.